So, welcome all. Day 14 of book reading of A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. The background unhappiness. The ego creates separation, and separation creates suffering. The ego is therefore clearly pathological, apart from the obvious ones such as anger, hatred, and so on. There are other more subtle forms of negativity that are so common that are usually not recognized as such. For example, impatience, irritation, nervousness, and being fed up. They constitute the background unhappiness that is many people's predominant inner state. You need to be extremely alert and absolutely present to be able to detect them. Whenever you do, it is a moment of awakening, of disidentification from the mind. Here is one of the most common negative states that is easily overlooked precisely because it is so common, so normal. You may be familiar with it. Do you often experience a feeling of discontent that could be described as a kind of background resentment? It may either be specific or non specific. Many people spend a large part of their lives in that state. They are so identified with it that they cannot stand back and see it. Underlying that feeling are certain unconscious held beliefs, that is to say, thoughts. You think these thoughts in the same way that you dream your dreams when you are asleep. In other words, you don't know you are thinking those thoughts, just as a dreamer doesn't know he is dreaming. Here are some of the most common unconscious thoughts that feed the feeling of discontent or background resentment. I have stripped away the content from those thoughts so that the bare structure remains. They become more clearly visible that way. Whenever there is unhappiness in the background of your life or even in the foreground, you can see which of these thoughts applies and fill in your own content according to your personal situation. There is something that needs to happen in my life before I can be at peace, happy, fulfilled, etc. And I resent that it hasn't happened yet. Maybe my resentment would finally make it happen. Something happened in the past that should not have happened, and I resent that. If that hadn't happened, I would be at peace now. Something is happening now that should not be happening, and it is preventing me from being at peace now. Often the unconscious beliefs are directed towards a person, and so happening becomes doing. You should do this or that so that I can be at peace. And I resent that you haven't done it yet. Maybe my resentment will make you do it. Something you or I did, said, or failed to do in the past is preventing me from being at peace now. What you're doing or failing to do now is preventing me from being at peace. So in life, it's more about if certain things don't happen the way we wanted them to be. It's very nice and very convenient for all individuals to open that box of excuses कि ये इसलिए नहीं हुआ, इसलिए मैं खुश नहीं हुआ, and I resent that fact. Each and every time अगर हम अपने हैप्पीनेस का कंट्रोल या अपने हैप्पीनेस का बेस किसी एक्सटर्नल चीज को देंगे या किसी एक्सटर्नल पर्सन को देंगे, एक्सटर्नल सिचुएशन को देंगे या एक्सटर्नल इवेंट को देंगे, what is going to happen is it's always going to get you to open that box of excuses, because the human mind or the egoic state of the mind has very nicely and conveniently made us all believe that happiness is something which is associated with something external to me, not exactly inside me, but anything and everything outside of me, वही happiness है. और जब वो मुझे नहीं मिलती, I resent that state. And in a lot of cases, always resentment में, as it said mentioned, there is always an external person involved. It is only because of him or it is only because of this situation that I am not able to be happy. Just ask yourself, what does it truly take to be happy? छोटा सा question. What does it take to be happy? Do you think the happiness of having a gadget or having, anything that is external to you is going to be long lasting? No. Because anything and everything that is outside of you, which is of this form world, has a validity, has an expiry date. In fact, the happiness also in an external thing has an expiry date. I remember when we were kids, we used to always think, यार पढ़ना ना बड़ा मुश्किल है, पढ़ना ना बड़ा मुश्किल है. जब हम कॉलेज में हो जाएंगे ना, things would be better. We'll be happy then. Very nice. कॉलेज में हो गए. नहीं यार, कॉलेज भी ठीक है, but once you start working na, things will be better. Started working. I think when we get married na, things will be better. Shadi bhi ho gayi. I think when we have kids na, we'll get happier. It's not that that happiness was not coming. Happiness was coming at every time, showing you the glimpse. It's just that the attraction to have more. And when I say the attraction to have more, it is always accompanied with a feeling of I do not have enough. That is why I need more. The concept of just having more is not that issue. But that concept of having more is accompanied with the feeling that I do not have enough. That is where the issue lies. So if I say, I desire more money, I desire more things, that's a desire. Okay. But is my happiness based on that desire? Slightly, yes. Normally, एक normal इंसान को अगर हम बात करें, हाँ यार मिल जाएगा तो अच्छा ही होगा, I'll feel happy. But that is a happiness which is conditional. So any conditional happiness definitely has a validity, definitely has an expiry date. Because that is not eternal happiness. That is a temporary form happiness in this materialistic objective world where the happiness is associated with the object and with the prime feeling of having more, accompanied with the flip side that I do not have enough. और वो सारा सर्कल उस कॉन्सेप्ट से चल रहा है. So whenever the happiness which is always in the future, when it's linked with an external thing, is never permanent, will have a validity, will have an expiry date. But the true happiness, it's very important to note वो true happiness कहाँ देख सकते हैं हम, because at the end of the day, हैप्पीनेस की जो वो ट्रू स्टेट है ना, वो अंडरस्टैंडिंग से इतनी नहीं आती जितना एक्सपीरियंस करके आती है. सो व्हेन यू आर स्पेंडिंग दैट 5 minutes with a being, with a being who is enjoying that state of happiness, that is where you also get into that state and have a glimpse. So next time you meet a 2 year old or a 3 year old kid, जिसकी अभी कोई कंडीशनिंग अभी स्टार्ट ही हुई है, 1 year 2 year old में कोई कंडीशनिंग अभी एस्टैब्लिश नहीं होते, दे आर true forms of pure consciousness at play. They are in that happy state because they can be happy in all situations, and even if they get sad or they cry, they will come out of it automatically. One moment they're crying, and say 10 seconds later they're laughing. So what we have done is associated a gesture with happiness, wherein happiness is only when you're smiling, whereas smiling or laughing is a gesture. Happiness can be when you're crying. There is a concept called happy tears, because happiness is that state जहां पे आपने कोई कंडीशन नहीं लगाई कि ये होगा तो मैं खुश होऊंगा, ये होगा तो मैं हंसूंगा. नो, a gesture of happiness is smile, a gesture of happiness is laughing, but happiness is unconditionally being thankful for whatever is as it is, and there is no if, no but, no condition to it. अगर मेरे को उस टाइम पे रोना भी आ रहा है, and it's a happy tear, it's okay, but I am happy where I am with what is as it is. Then there is no resentment. Then you do not open the box of excuses, because box of excuses is nothing. It's a coping mechanism of the body. It's a human coping mechanism. मेरे साथ ये नहीं हुआ, so I like it. I have to put the blame on somebody else so that I am at peace. You will come up with an excuse from this box, and this box has infinite options available. Infinite options. जब मर्जी खोल लो. It's available. The moment we, as an empowered individual, stop putting conditions on our happiness, if this happens then only I will be happy, ये होएगा तभी मैं खुश होऊंगा, या this thing will turn out in my favor, then only I will be happy. That happiness, even if it comes, has a validity, has an expiry date. So that is not the true eternal happiness. Because true eternal happiness is unconditional. The secret of happiness. All of the above are assumptions, unexamined thoughts that are confused with reality. They are stories the ego creates to convince you that you cannot be at peace now or cannot be fully yourself now. Being at peace and being who you are, that is, being yourself, are one. I repeat, being at peace and being who you are, that is being yourself, are one. The ego says, maybe at some point in the future, I can be at peace. And if this, that, or the other happens, or I obtain this or become that, or it says it can never be at peace because of something that happened in the past. Listen to people's stories, and they could all be entitled, Why I Cannot Be at Peace Now. The ego doesn't know that your only opportunity for being at peace is now. Or maybe it does know and it is afraid that you might find this out. Peace, after all, is the end of ego. How to be at peace now? By making peace with the present moment. The present moment is the field on which the game of life happens. It cannot happen anywhere else. Once you have made peace with the present moment, see what happens. What you can do or choose to do, or rather, what life does through you. There are three words that convey the secret of the art of living, the secret of all success and happiness. One with life. Being one with life is being one with now. You then realize that you don't live your life, but life lives you. Life is the dancer, and you are the dance. The ego loves its resentment of reality. What is reality? Whatever is. Buddha called it tatata, the suchness of life, which is no more than the suchness of this moment. Opposition towards that suchness is one of the main features of the ego. It creates the negativity that the ego thrives on, the unhappiness that it loves. In this way, you make yourself and others suffer and don't even know that you are doing it. Don't know that you are creating hell on earth to create suffering without recognizing it. This is the essence of unconscious living. This is being totally in the grip of the ego. The extent of the ego's inability to recognize itself and see what it is doing is staggering and unbelievable. I will do exactly what it condemns others. Yeah. The extent of the ego's inability to recognize itself and see what it is doing is staggering and unbelievable. It will do exactly what it condemns others for and not see it. When it is pointed out, it will use angry denial, clever arguments, and self justification to distort the facts. People do it, corporations do it, governments do it. When all else fails, the ego will resort to shouting or even to physical violence. Send in the Marines. We can now understand the deep wisdom in Jesus' words on the cross. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. It's a very interesting line. How the ego operates in our in our own sense is हम बोलने को तो बड़ा कुछ बोलेंगे. You should do this, you should do this. But when it comes to our own situation, we will have something where we will be doing exactly what we are telling others not to do. And in that context, when somebody points a finger out to the individual who is doing what he is condemning people to do, the ego comes in such a beautiful manner, and we will start giving justifications, excuses. So, all these justification, excuses, they are nothing but extreme friendship buddies of the ego. ये और कुछ नहीं कर रहे हैं. Because the premise from where ego is there, it is very clear. It will stop the individual from realizing that, peace is possible. And it's a very simple thing. You can always refer to is ego actually makes things so complicated, so complex, that we start doubting our own abilities. यार हम भी वो पीस पा सकते हैं. Can we also be that peaceful? What they say, be in the present moment, enjoy the blissful life. It looks as if पता नहीं कितना उसके लिए काम करना पड़ेगा, और इन रियलिटी इट इज द ऑपोजिट. उसके लिए कुछ काम ही नहीं करना है. दैट इज द ब्यूटी. बट द माइंड, द ईगो makes it so complicated that we all feel or have this notion that eternal state of peace, पता नहीं यार मैं कब पहुंच पाऊंगा उस पे. मेरा तो सुबह ये, दोपहर को ये, शाम को ये, फलाना टिमका, इसने मुझे ये बोल दिया. You're always in that thing, and always try to check yourself whenever you are in that scenario of not being at peace. You are either in your past, पीछे क्या हुआ था, उसने क्या कहा था, उसने कैसे किया था, क्या हुआ था, whatever was there in the past, or you are thinking about the future. कल क्या होगा, परसों क्या होगा. That's it. But the time I gather all my attention, gather all my energies and consciousness into myself right here, right now, and live this moment, I'm at peace. माइंड में जो थॉट आ रहे हैं, जो जो हमें अनकंफर्टेबल कर रहे हैं, वो या पास्ट के हैं या फ्यूचर के हैं. करंट के तो थॉट ही नहीं आते. Because that's the state we want to be, where there is no thought in the mind and it's a blank state. The mind is still. And we are in that state of pure bliss. What happens when if you guys do meditation, या आप ध्यान लगाते हो, या आप पाठ भी करते हो, very religiously, in the sense कि when you are actually gathering yourself from whatever is happening in the world, maybe for a minute, maybe for 2 minutes, and just being in that present moment, truly with yourself, and not in your past, and neither in your future. And everybody has experienced it. And it's not something which is कि मैंने एक्सपीरियंस नहीं किया, कि आप लोगों ने एक्सपीरियंस नहीं किया. हम सब ने किया हुआ है वो. Some point of life we have experienced. There is a state where in terms of the stages of sleep, where there is that deep sleep delta state, where there is absolute chill, because उस टाइम पे कॉन्शियस माइंड और बेसिकली आपका ईगोइक माइंड शांत है, वो काम ही नहीं कर रहा है. सो इफ दैट इज पॉसिबल ड्यूरिंग दैट हाफ एन आवर ऑफ दैट डीप स्लीप स्टेट, जब बड़ी अच्छी नींद आती है, कुछ नहीं याद, बट हाँ यार मजा आ गया, सो के, दैट्स पॉसिबल. So if it's possible during the sleep, it's possible during the day. A lot of people, when they do meditation, when they do dhyan, or when they do bhakti, they are in that state where they are not thinking past mein kya hua tha, and they are not bothered future mein kya hoga, and they are just living the moment. And everybody has had, that moment could be when you're enjoying a movie, when you're enjoying something where you are truly present. That is what it takes, where whatever is that you are doing, you are fully present in the now. So वो कहीं जाना नहीं है, वो जहां है उसी में रहना है, ना पास्ट में जाना है ना फ्यूचर के बारे में सोचना है. And that is where all individuals actually enjoy that state of pure bliss. But हमें बाद में जब जब वो स्टेट में होते बड़ा अच्छा लग रहा होता है, चाहे वो 1 मिनट की हो, 10 मिनट की हो, 5 मिनट की हो, होती है, सबके साथ हुई होगी. रियलाइज नहीं किया, अवेयरनेस में शायद नहीं था. So now when you go into that state, you have this awareness of this knowledge that this is being in the now, where I'm not thinking about the past or about the future. And this is as simple as it is. It's not at all complicated. But it's the ego who has made it so complicated, so complex, that we start doubting our own abilities. Because फिर उसमें ईगो को तो मजा ही नहीं आता. And there is nothing left for the ego. Because if you are at peace with what is as it is, then there is nothing that the ego can do. Because the concept of ego is to get attention through an association, जिसमें आपका बॉक्स ऑफ एक्सक्यूज खुले. आप कुछ हलचल करो, कुछ कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी सोचो, कुछ पास्ट में जाओ, कुछ फ्यूचर में जाओ. But the moment you do it and you realize, yes, it's possible. It's as simple as it is. It's only the ego has made it complicated because of the threat of its existence. So ego is that part of our mind which we as an individual have identified as our own, in the sense that I am this mind. और वहां से जो उसको importance मिली, that is where the whole ego gets into that shape. So the moment that identification starts happening, that I am not this mind, I am not this body, I am not this thought, I am not this emotion, I am the witness who is seeing all this, I am the soul who is seeing all this. This is the thought of the mind, this is the reaction of the body. That is the moment where you are in the present moment. तो कॉम्प्लिकेशन करने के लिए आप जितना मर्जी इसको कॉम्प्लिकेट कर लो, but in reality and in experiential reality, it is as simple as it is. Just think, when was that 1 minute, 2 minute you had when you were a normal breath work, if you do nicely, can get you that to that state of bliss where you are not thinking about what happened in the past and we are not thinking what happened in the future. Okay, so it's like the thought is coming, because the thoughts will come continuously, but the individual that is truly me is not giving any energy to that thought. So the thought is coming, going, thought is coming, going. It's like you're standing at this huge train station. As an individual, you're standing at this huge train station, and all the trains that are passing by on different platforms are the various thoughts that are coming to you. And you are just standing looking at the thoughts. The moment you give your thought that energy, that means you've taken the tickets in that thought. चाहे वो पास्ट में लेके जाएगा, चाहे वो फ्यूचर में ले जाएगा, कहीं से कहीं का कहीं से कहाँ पहुंच जाएगा. But the moment you again realize that, yes, I got carried away with this thought, you immediately take that exit of that train. You're back on the station again with so many thoughts coming. till the time you're on that train station where you can just see your thoughts go here and there, and you are not giving any thought or not sitting on any of the train thoughts and traveling with that thought, you are in that state of the now. To end the misery that has afflicted the human condition for thousands of years, you have to start with yourself and take responsibility for your inner state at any given moment. That means now ask yourself, is there negativity in me at this moment? Then become alert, attentive to your thoughts as well as to your emotions. Watch out for the low level unhappiness in whatever form at that I mentioned earlier, such as discontent, nervousness, being fed up, and so on. Watch out for thoughts that appear to justify or explain their unhappiness, but in reality cause it. The moment you become aware of a negative state within yourself, it does not mean you have failed. It means you have succeeded. Until that awareness happens, there is identification with inner states, and such identification is ego. With awareness comes disidentification from thoughts, emotions, and reactions. This is not to be confused with denial. The thoughts, emotions, or reactions are recognized. And in the moment of recognizing, disidentification happens automatically. Your sense of self, of who you are, then undergoes a shift. Before you were the thoughts, emotions, and reactions. Now you are the awareness, the conscious presence that witnesses those states. One day, I will be free of the ego. Who is talking? The ego. To become free of the ego is not really a big job, but a very small one. All you need to do is be aware of your thoughts and emotions as they happen. This is not really a doing, but an alert seeing. In that sense, it is true that there is nothing you can do to become free of the ego. When that shift happens, which is the shifting from thinking to awareness, an intelligence far greater than the ego's cleverness begins to operate in your life. Emotions and even thoughts become depersonalized through awareness. Their impersonal nature is recognized. There is no longer a self in them. They are just human emotions, human thoughts. Your entire personal history, which is ultimately no more than a story, a bundle of thoughts and emotion, becomes of secondary importance and no longer occupies the forefront of your consciousness. It no longer forms the basis of your sense of identity. You are the light of presence, the awareness that is prior to and deeper than any thoughts and emotions. So, again, each and everything of getting rid of this ego or having a still mind is all about being consciously aware. Because if I'm consciously aware, then I am aware that this is a thought and there are, this is the emotion. But is this me? Or is this the identification of the ego? That's the question we need to ask. और वो तभी आती है when you are in that state of awareness, when you are state of being consciously aware. Okay, this is a thought. The moment you become identified with this thought as your own, and the moment You give that thought a meaning and be that emotion along with that thought. Bang, on the thought train again. और ये constant चलता रहेगा. It's not that it's going to stop. No, the thoughts will happen. A human being has, I mean, 66,000 average, 60 to 66,000 thoughts a day. So just imagine every second पे एक ट्रेन आ रही है थॉट की, every second में. और जैसे ही हमने थॉट को एनर्जी दी, और the mind gives a meaning to that thought, it produces an emotion. You are attached now with that thought, and you are basically on that train of thought, and you are on that journey. But when you are consciously aware, you are now aware that this is a thought. The moment that thought is given a meaning by your egoistic mind, you've bought the ticket of thought train. Till the time you're consciously aware that this is a thought, agreed. But this is a thought by the mind. I do not want to get onto that train. And just watch the thoughts go by and be that awareness, that witness of all the thoughts that are coming. Because जो भी वो थॉट आ रहा है, कहीं ना कहीं वो अपने साथ या तो कोई पास्ट का ला रहा है, या कहीं ना कहीं अपने साथ कोई फ्यूचर का लेके आ रहा है. When I as an individual is coming from that state of being consciously aware, and with awareness of this knowledge is also there, that it's all about being in the present moment and not being thinking about the past or the future. That is that state when you let that thought just pass away, just fades away, and you become that witness who is seeing those thoughts, or who is imagining on those thoughts, but not giving it your energies, not giving it a meaning, and not sitting on that train of thought. Pathological forms of ego. We have seen the ego in its essential nature pathological. If we use the word in its wider sense to denote dysfunction and suffering, many mental disorders consist of the same egoic traits that operate in a normal person, except that they have become so pronounced that their pathological nature is now obvious to anyone except the sufferer. For example, many normal people tell certain kinds of lies from time to time in order to appear more important, more special, and to enhance this image in the mind of others, who they know what their achievements, abilities, and possessions are, and whatever else the ego uses to identify with. Some people, however, driven by the ego's feeling of insufficiency and its need to have or be more, lie habitually and compulsively. Most of what they tell you about themselves, their story, is a complete fantasy, a fictitious edifice the ego has designed for itself to feel bigger and more special. Their grandiose and inflated self image can sometimes fool others, but usually not for long. It is then quickly recognized by most people as a complete fiction. The mental illness that is called paranoid schizophrenia, or paranoia for short, is essentially an exaggerated form of ego. It usually consists of a fictitious story the mind has invented to make sense of a persistent underlying feeling of fear. The main element of the story is the belief that certain people, sometimes large numbers or almost everyone, are plotting against me or are conspiring to control or kill me. The story often has an inner consistency and logic so that it sometimes fools others into believing it too. Sometimes organizations or entire nations have paranoid belief systems at their very basis. The ego's fear and distrust of other people, its tendency to emphasize the otherness of others by focusing on their perceived faults and make those faults into their identity, is taken a little bit further and makes others into inhuman monsters. The ego needs others, but its dilemma is that deep down it hates and fears them. John Paul Sartre statements, hell is other people, is the voice of the ego. The person suffering from paranoia experiences that hell most acutely, but everyone in whom the egoic patterns still operate will feel it to some degree. The stronger the ego in you, the more likely it is that in your perception, other people are the main source of problems in your life. It is also more than likely that you will make life difficult for others, but of course, you won't be able to see that. It is always others who seem to be doing it to you. The mental illness we call paranoia also manifests another symptoms that is an element of every ego, although in paranoia it takes on a more extreme form. The more the sufferer sees himself persecuted, spied on, or threatened by others, the more pronounced becomes his sense of being the center of the universe around whom everything resolves, and the more special and important he feels as the imagined focal point of so many people's attention. His sense of being a victim, of being wronged by so many people, makes him feel very special. In the story that forms the basis of his delusional system, he often assigns to himself the role of both victim and potential hero who is going to save the world or defeat the forces of evil. So, schizophrenic patients होते हैं, those who get mentally very disturbed and they have start hallucinating things and all, it's nothing but an extension of what the ego can go up to, because ईगो उसको ऐसे इन्फ्लेट कर देता है, so जो अंदर का हमारा एक बेसिक को डर होता है, या कैन बी वेरी strong fear inside of you, that it creates a certain image. And in everybody's life, that's the beauty of this, in everybody's life, the reason why things are not, or the reason for your problems or issues in your life are never your own. मेरे को बहुत रेयरली बंदा मिलता है जो ये कहता है, यार ये मेरी लाइफ की प्रॉब्लम मेरी बनाई हुई है। लोग ठीक है, सिचुएशन ठीक है, सर्कमस्टांस ठीक है, इवेंट्स ठीक है, सेल्फ क्रिएटेड है, nobody admits it. That's the beauty. But the whole question here is, if everybody thinks like this, because there are hardly any exceptions to this, if the reason for all problems in every individual's life journey here on planet earth is because of other people, then वो start कहाँ से हो रहा है? Because what's happening in my life which I am not comfortable with is a problem in me, or is an issue I need to address, is coming from outside. मैं तो ठीक हूँ. at the end of the day, we need to be very, very clear that it's okay that you are not okay. And the day we make peace with this statement that it's okay not to be okay, you start slicing the ego there and then. Because as per the ego, you cannot be not okay. And if you are not okay, there has to be somebody who's responsible for it. There has to be some person, some situation, some event, some circumstances, something outside of you that has to take the responsibility, because that has to come from that box of excuse. At the moment I accept that it is okay not to be okay, you start slicing that ego, where he now does not have a box of excuses to blame somebody for not being okay, because the onus of responsibility of whatever is happening in my life, in this current life, I am taking the responsibility, and I am not going external in terms of blaming anybody else or putting it out on something external to me, and not opening that box of excuses and accepting that I am not okay, but at times it's okay not to be okay. There's a beautiful song, I'll share it in the group. It's okay not to be okay. That's the title of the song. One of my favorite songs. But yeah, that's as simple as it can get. The moment I accept or take responsibility that I am not okay, but I am okay with the fact that I am not okay. And I'm not blaming anybody for anything that is happening, because I am accepting that I'm not okay and I'm okay with that fact. Slash the ego 50%. The collective ego of tribes, nations, and religious organizations also frequently contains a strong element of paranoia, us against the evil others. It is the cause of much human suffering. The Spanish Inquisition, the persecution and burning of heretics and witches, the relations between nations leading up to the First and Second World Wars, communism throughout its history, the Cold War, McCarthyism in America in the 1950s, prolonged violent conflict in the Middle East are all painful episodes in human history dominated by extreme collective paranoia. The more unconscious individuals, groups, or nations are, the more likely it is that egoic pathology will assume the form of physical violence. Violence is primitive, but still widespread, very widespread way in which the ego attempts to assert itself, to prove itself right and another wrong. With every unconscious people, arguments can easily lead to physical violence. What is an argument? Two or more people express their opinions, and those opinions differ. Each person is so identified with the thought that make up their opinion that those thoughts harden into mental positions which are invested with a sense of self. In other words, identity and thought merge. Once this has happened, when I defend my opinions, thoughts, I feel and act as if I were defending my very self. Unconsciously, I feel and act as if I were fighting for survival. And so my emotions will reflect this unconscious belief. They become turbulent. I'm upset, angry, defensive, or aggressive. I need to win at all costs, lest I become annihilated. That's the illusion. The ego doesn't know that mind and mental positions have nothing to do with who you are, because the ego is the unobserved mind itself. In Zen, they say, don't seek the truth, just cease to cherish opinions. What does that mean? Let go of identification with your mind. Who you are beyond the mind then emerges by itself. So the moment